Hi guys, this is Walesa from Alive Refurbish. I'm super excited to be sharing the full marble technique with you today. We're gonna be doing some scumbling with a couple different colors, using some feathers to create the veining effect. And if you participated on last week's giveaway, I'm gonna be announcing the winner at the end of today's video. So stay tuned for today's makeover.
This is a half moon cabinet that I thrifted about 8 months ago. It's been sitting in my garage. It has that beautiful antique mirror in the back and a glass shelf that I took off to refinish.
Right now, what I'm debating is if I should keep the glass or not. It's a very vintage look, which I kind of love. I just don't know how it's gonna look once I'm done with it. Here, let me show you. But it almost looks like it's been smoked, like smoky glass. I'm sure there's like some name for it. Very unique. I'm gonna try to keep it, but let's see what happens.
I'm planning on spraying the bottom of the cabinet, and because of that I'm removing the hardware, and instead of trying to paint around the glass, sometimes it's better just to remove it. The parts that are holding the glass in place are made of rubber, so I'm going to be using these pliers and a tool that I normally use to get nails out, just to get into that corner, and it pulls right out. If you ever work on a similar piece or on any cabinet that has glass, you are never gonna regret removing these pieces and removing the glass to paint. The amount of dust that accumulates between the glass and these tiny plastic parts, it's unbelievable. At the end, your project will look more professional and clean. Unless I put all of these little parts in one plastic bag, I can see myself losing some. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I think the cabinet has been sitting in my dusty car garage / workshop for 8 months. It was so dusty, it really needed a good scrub, and I'm just using Dawn dish soap and water here. I spilled some paint and some other product on the top of this cabinet because it was a place where I would set all the things that I was using for other projects, but nothing that a good scraping and sanding can't get rid of. Quick reminder that 3 main reasons why we sand before painting is to make sure that our primer or paint has some tooth to hang onto the surface, and to smooth imperfections like dings, scratches, and finally to remove flaky finishes.
I know that sometimes people have strong opinions about removing hinges, that is black and white, you have to remove them all the time, but not all cabinets have the same design. That's why I look at how the piece is made before I decide if I remove hinges or not.
When you paint, that's gonna add thickness on this side and also on this underneath the hinge. And I'm afraid that when I do that and I try to close it, it's not going to close, and that's why I'm not going to mess with them.
I'm just gonna be putting tape over them and then paint the rest.
The Surfprep sanding system has both the wire mesh abrasives and also the foam bendable ones. The wire ones sand a little more aggressively, and I like to use them on the flattened areas, but for anything that's curvy, I love the bendable foam ones because they hug the curves. It's time to rinse my piece, which means I can almost start priming. You know that prepping is a super important step. I don't recommend that you skip it because this is gonna guarantee that your finish lasts for a very long time. Another wonderful feature that this cabinet has is a light. I'm covering it with plastic so that my primer and paint won't touch it. I'm applying 3 coats of this clear primer, waiting 45 minutes between one coat and the next. It is recommended that you wait 1 hour before painting.
I let the shellac dry overnight, and I'm actually gonna be using a white primer for the top. I think paint is magical, so I'm gonna try to replicate a marble top using paint.
You know, there are always these little decisions that you need to make as you go. One of them was, should I do the full marble technique first and then paint the bottom, or vice versa? It made sense to me to paint the full marble technique at the end. To paint the bottom black, I'm loading my detail finish nozzle from Wagner with coal black from Fusion Mineral Paint. The paint was a little bit thicker than usually is. I think it's because it's been sitting around for a while, so I just had to add a little bit more water than usual. You can try a viscosity cup, but I've done this for so long that I just eyeball the consistency, and that gives me a pretty good idea how the product is gonna spray. Each spray gun behaves differently, which means that they will handle different types of viscosity. If you're new at spray painting, I highly recommend this brand, and specifically this detail finish nozzle one. After using several different brands, I find that this style is the easiest one to clean and use. And they are also pretty affordable ones, so it's great for beginners. I almost forgot that these rubber pieces needed to be painted too. My strategy for painting them wasn't perfect. First, I wiped them down with some degreaser from Simple Green. Once they were clean, I started spraying, but you can tell my spray gun kept moving them from left to right, and they were going on top of each other. But even though my strategy wasn't perfect, I still got it done. The base color for the full marble finish is a true white, and that is why I'm using a white primer to save me on coats of paint. I applied 2 coats of mint shellac base primer here. To minimize any amount of texture that both the primer and paint can leave, I'm sanding between coats with a 220 grit. This right here is going to be our base color for our faux marble technique. It's a true white color called Victorian Lace from Fusion Mineral Paint. I applied a couple of coats. For the scumball technique, we need to make our paint colors more translucent. So we're gonna dilute each paint color with 2 parts water, 1 part paint, 1 part clear glaze. This sea sponge is what's gonna help me give this some texture. I already mixed the sterling silver glaze and water mixture, and in my brain I'm gonna have this diagonal line that I'm gonna follow. It's gonna start at the upper left part of the cabinet top, working my way down to the right bottom side. This technique, you wanna touch and drag also slightly your sponge. Leave some space on the edges and even in between your touches. Then grab a lint-free rag. It's almost like doing little taps on top of that paint, moving it all over. Don't follow a specific order. This is going to distribute the color throughout the surface. Remember, we're looking for a color variation here, so don't worry about the surface looking perfect. Try to work fast here because the paint mixture dries fast. This is how it looks after the sterling silver coat. For the next scumball, I'm using the darker gray, which is Little Lamb. I already mixed my paint with the glaze and water. I'm gonna be using the same technique. Touch, drag, leave spaces open. Leave especially an extra space open where that diagonal imaginary line was earlier. I recommend using a clean lint-free rag with each color to make sure that you're not blending the colors more than they need to be. And right here, if you can see, I'm starting to do that little tap on the edges first and trying to cover up those empty spaces before I start doing the tap on the rest. Remember, you want a color variation because you want this faux marble finish to look natural. Nothing looks even with marble, which is what makes it so beautiful. For your piece to look natural, you want to create this flow between the top and the edges. This is how the top looks after I'm done blending Little Lamb. For the next step, we're going to be using our glaze, water, and paint mixture, but this time using Victorian lace, which was our base color. The only difference is how we apply the Victorian lace. I'm using a foam brush and I'm going to be covering the whole surface this time. Here I just wanted to show you real quick the part that hasn't had the Victorian glaze versus the one that has. Can you see how much it softens the colors underneath? It is this step that starts making the top look like real marble. Of course that you have to wait until after the paint dries to move on to the next step, but it doesn't take very long because, like I said earlier, this diluted paint dries fast. To create that veining effect, I'm gonna be using the darker gray, but I'm gonna dilute the color even more. So I'm gonna be mixing 1 part paint, 1 part glaze, 3 parts water. Notice how after loading my feather with paint here, I offload some because I don't need much. Then I rock my feather going up and down. You can also backtrack a little bit with a feather. That's gonna give you some variation and create almost like a natural veining that you can use to add more veins here. So here I'm taking advantage of that natural split that happened by moving the feather to create another vein. I really think that what makes the veining look so real here is that motion of moving my wrist up and down. For me, the veining part was the most thrilling one of them all because I've never done that. You can add as much veining as you want. The only thing is that before it settles down completely, so after about a minute, you can do little dabs on it and this is gonna soften your veining. And then we can move to our final step. It is looking so realistic. This technique is probably one of my favorite ones I've ever tried. For the final step, we're gonna apply another coat of Victorian glaze. Same thing, make sure you cover the entire surface for this paint color and work it in like you have done with the other layers. Once again, check out the difference between the left and right. This is just the application of the Victorian lace color. One simple step, but it makes a huge difference. Of course, I need to protect this beautiful finish from any future scratches or dings, and that is why I'm loading my detail finish nozzle, but this time with this polyurethane from Varathane, I applied a total of 3 coats. Now let's talk about the details such as hardware. I let the hardware sit on a 1-to-1 ratio mix of water and vinegar for 2 hours. Then I grab a 000 steel wool and bar skipper's friend to give it a good scrub. Like it normally does, it made a huge difference. To match the hinges to the hardware, I applied this rough and buff in the color antique gold. And with that, we are done with our cabinet. Let's take a quick look at how it started and check it out. It is so gorgeous. But it's your turn to tell me in the comments, what do you guys think of today's transformation?
you so much to Amy Howard for hosting this giveaway with me. See who the winner is for the beginners bundle kit. Team done 1594. So I'm gonna be reaching out to you, Eugene. Rest of you, thank you so much for participating. I hope you enjoyed today's technique, and I will see you guys next week.